We have Mark, and it says that prophecies are keeping you holding on to religious beliefs. So we'd like to give you the chance to explain your position a little bit, Mark. You're on with Jenna and Anthony.
Welcome, Mark.
Hello, Jenna and Anthony. How are you?
Doing all right.
Hello.
Doing good.
Can you explain what these prophecies are doing to your religious beliefs? What's going on?
Yeah, let's say so. That's what I said to the guy that I spoke on the phone before the show. I hope I put the message out there to him. But that's basically what I said, yes. I heard a show earlier, maybe a year or so, with Matt, when a guy was mentioning those kind of things, and it kind of was intriguing to me. And Matt, of course, didn't have as much time to address all of them, but some of them were intriguing to me, and I was not completely satisfied with Matt's answers. Mostly yes, but not completely. There were some predictions on those holy books, whatever they call them. For example...
Well, Matt's not here today. Today you've got Jenna and Anthony. And
what might actually be helpful, too, is can you tell us what a prophecy is? What is your definition of that word so we're all on the same page?
Let's better say like predictions. I don't know if they were prophecies, but yeah, you can call them, I guess, prophecies. I'm not an expert. I was the thing that I said, I was hoping that Matt would be on the show because I know that he read Quran and Bible. I know that you, Jenna, once said that you did not read the Quran, but you did the Bible. I don't know about the Anthony, but doesn't matter anyways. Like predictions, for example, that always was the question, like, did the Quran or Bible predict something that science hasn't found yet? And there were a couple of those predictions made on the books that the guy mentioned, and I found those things on the books, but I guess they can be interpreted differently. But one of them was like specific, where it says that the sun will rise on the west, and scientists just like, I think lately, when I say lately, maybe like last 20 years or so, they came with a theory as such that the sun actually one day will rise on the west instead of the east. And if I confuse those two Western because I'm not American, English is not my language again, and one of them is this. So could you guys like explain to me like how did they come up with that, or did they actually know that, or maybe they just came from their imagination? So I got like 10 prophecies like that science.
We don't need to go through all 10. I'd actually prefer if we keep this kind of high level. And I do notice that your line is kind of staticky. So if there's anything that you can do to shore that up, that would be great. But we'll talk for a little bit, and then maybe you can kind of resolve that. But prophecies, you're calling predictions. Here's what I'm wondering: are there particular books that you read that have prophecies that make you or convince you more that is true? So, for example, you mentioned the Bible and the Quran. If you were to discover other prophecies in other books, would you be equally as wondering about them?
No, because to be honest, I'm programmed to believe in those two books, because of the culture and stuff. And so those two books might seem to me more convincing. So that's
right.
What I actually call
it. Okay, cool. I like this idea of. I'm really glad that we defined what a prophecy is, and it's a prediction. Here's what I'm wondering though, like how much of a factor, because when I read your description of the call, it sounded like this was one of the last things that's keeping you into the belief. Is that a fair representation? Or is this like the most convincing thing that's letting you still think that this is factually true, that God is real?
Not in the sense of like God-like figure, but maybe that somehow they had knowledge about science more than we give them credit for, and I don't exactly understand back in the time where could they have gathered this information or knowledge. So I go to this what usually say like, oh, how would they could know and stuff like that. I know it sounds ridiculous when I say that, but that's
how could you verify that? How could you find out if they did actually know?
I have no clue. Neither way, that they did or they did not know. You just those particularly those, like around 10 predictions that I read, seem to me kind of, intriguing. I'm not saying that.
I'm curious what it is that these prophecies have you convinced of exactly. I don't want to assume a certain religion or anything. I'm curious, what is it that these prophecies have you convinced of?
I'm not convinced of. They just seem that they predicted them, and they spoke about them like even hundreds of years, like kind of explicitly, like they were like clear, not like those other predictions that you can you can translate them differently, or you can talk about them and go around them. Those were like kind of explicit, let's say, like sun is going to rise in the west, and then science come up with it. Yeah.
So you have some prophecies that you found in the Quran or in the Bible and found that they may have been true. So what does that mean?
I don't know. I'm out of it almost. That is kind of keeping me still there. Like, maybe, like maybe they did, maybe they did not know.
But I'm curious what there is. When you say keeping you still there, what does still there mean? Still where? Where are you?
Kind of make me wonder, maybe am I rushing out of this, or have I been programmed to stay in it, that maybe I'm finding fault in other things and trying to give them credit for whatever they have, something like that. Or sometimes I think maybe they had some sort of idea, at least. It doesn't have to be, Elohim, God, or whatever. Just maybe they had some sort of scientific method, or maybe they were deep thinkers or philosophers that.
I can understand this. I can understand this feeling or this thought that, when you read something in a book that is a prediction and it appears to happen, that must mean that everything else in the book is true. However, I find myself resisting that temptation to make that leap, because when I look at prophecies or predictions, in my view, the more specific they are, probably the better. And now I'm not an expert in prophecies, or I probably couldn't even name any, but my understanding is that that many of these holy books have predictions about things that will happen that are pretty general. They're not as specific as I would have preferred them to be. And the other thing too is humans, I think, could actively work to make certain things happen. So these predictions are laid out publicly for people to read and then look for, and maybe even try to work to make happen, which makes me wonder, well, how the heck can that really lend any credence to the actual text if humans can observe these things and then actively work to make them happen in reality? So I would be worried that I would be drawing a conclusion by observing something like maybe there was a prediction and it came true. That's interesting, but it wouldn't be enough for me to say, okay, that's good enough for me to believe everything else that this book says, especially when I could look at a prophecy and say, it's pretty vague. Here's 5 things that I would have done to make it even better, but it's not there. Why isn't it there? And maybe even more importantly, why are people's standards different when it comes to looking at a prophecy or a prediction and then saying, oh, there's really something there to it? I'd really like to kind of maybe explore, like, I don't want to get into the specifics of the prophecy, but I'd like to better understand, what is it about observing prophecies or predictions and then you then taking the next leap to, and you haven't really said what you next do with that, but I am curious what you actually do. What goes through your mind when you read a prophecy and then it appears to have actually happened? Where's your brain taking you there?
I said prophecies, and I just realized that I said there are some claims actually that not just prophecies, but explanations for some natural causes and so on, like Big Bang, and that's not a prophecy. That's something that happened that explains.
We can expand it to claims.
Mountains being like, sorry.
Do you mind? Actually, it sounds like you have the show playing in the background. Do you mind muting that for us?
It could be. I don't know. I'm trying to move around the house, so.
Thank you.
Do you hear me now better? Is it better? Any better?
Yes, you're good.
The thing when I read, when I hear old books that have talked about things that appear to be happening in reality, and then maybe even going so far as to make predictions or prophecies, I think it's really tempting, especially when you didn't go this far, but a lot of people want these beliefs to be true, and they're looking to make connections that make the book true to them, or it's good enough for them to say, that was a claim, that claim actually happens in reality. I can't imagine how somebody 2,000 years ago could have anticipated that that's actually what's happening, and we've confirmed it with science. Wow, there must be really something to this. It could be really tempting to draw those connections, but I'm of the perspective that we have to be really cautious and skeptical when it comes to linking these things together. Here's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if you would find this compelling. If the three of us actually decided to sit down and write a book that made claims about things that we don't know the answers to yet, but we might in the next 10 or 15 years, like the best fuel mixture to get a probe to Mars or something along those lines. And maybe we even make predictions like this country will be the first country to put a person on Mars or something like that. But then we also included 10 other things that we just made up whole cloth. They're not even true. We used our imagination and we put some other stuff in there. If those predictions happened, would we be justified in concluding that the other 10 or 15 things that we made up were also true?
I understand what you're saying. I thought of all of those things pretty much. But the problem with all this actually could be of a different nature. Like it's like a hole that I believed for like majority of my life, and it seems like a graph, to be honest. It seems like, how do I fill that hole now and not feel like I wasted a good majority of my life believing in some nonsense?
But you know what? Maybe if you don't look at it like you wasted it, but you looked at it as you had an experience that when you it sounds to me like your belief is kind of loosening a little bit, like you're understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong, please, but it sounds to me like you're understanding that it's not as true as.
You're right. And last two times that I called, I don't know if you remember, but I listened to myself and I saw lack of sincerity. I was saying, like, I read those books. Actually, I didn't read them. I read through them here and there. And when I took the Bible and read it from the beginning, I found some horrendous things, like terrible. Like you can beat your slave up. If he doesn't die in the next 2 days, you're free. You have nothing to do with him anyway. You don't get held up guilty and so on. And I was like, how the heck those guys don't bring those kind of things in this show to ask the believers, because I had no clue about that. Or maybe you guys did. I don't know.
Here's what I'm wondering though, Mark, is you mentioned this commitment that you have to the belief, or that you had. It sounds like you're recognizing, like you invested time and your identity into a view that you're starting to take another look at. And I think it's amazing that you are allowing yourself to question and maybe even doubt the things that you thought were true. That's how we grow. So kudos to you for doing that.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's this economic concept of a sunk cost. And I used to run a business and I put everything into it. And I would work 100 hours a week. And it was really hard for me to recognize that this business really wasn't going anywhere, because I had to face that this concept that I wasn't living up to my own expectation. It was painful. So we can actually trick ourselves into maintaining views or not questioning them to the point where we start to let ourselves loosen our grips on those beliefs. And the fact that you recognize that you mentioned like you were in the hole in it. Like, I think it's a great metaphor. Mm-hmm. The fact that you're recognizing that you might be overly committed to a belief that you necessarily can't back up at the moment is healthy. And here's the other thing. You could decide to set that belief on the back burner and revisit it later when there are other reasons that are better than predictions or claims that were made in a book 200 or 2,000 years ago that appear to be matching reality today.
And back real quick to you saying that you feel like you've wasted time. That could be one way to look at it, but you could also look at it as you've been given the opportunity to experience truly believing in an entire world that may not exist, and then discovering that it may not exist. And I don't think that there are too many people in the world that actually have the opportunity to experience that. And now you have the opportunity to share what you've learned and to go out and do exactly what Anthony and I are doing and try to help other people through it.
Yeah, it seems to me, Mark, that you're recognizing that prophecy is not enough for you to maintain the belief.
Right.
That's the sense that I'm getting. And that's fine. Go find better reasons. And if you're unable to do that, you can just put this off to the back burner, like I said. But once you start interrogating the quality of the reasons for your belief, and you're starting to realize, these aren't good enough, because I could use this for any book, even a book that we made up together. Like that understanding is really good, and it's really healthy. But it doesn't mean that the original claims about that God aren't true. The God could still exist. You're just discovering that that's not enough. That's not a good enough reason for you. And especially when you're surrounded by lots of other people who do think that's a good reason, it could be tough to critically examine it. And I'm really pleased that you are allowing yourself to do that.
And thank you again for calling back and for sharing your doubts with us, because that's bold. That's hard to do.
Yeah. Can I one last question? Make it quick. I don't want to waste your time because I know others.
We have a lot of callers in the queue. Real quick.
Yeah, how do you get rid of this, not doubt, but that's kind of part of you as a person, that because like I said, you get programmed with it, and it's hard to get rid of, even if I don't believe. I think that's
the $1 million question.
How do you get rid of that?
There's a couple. It kind of depends on what you think you need. So, like, if I were, I probably would just ask you what you think you need. So I would say, like, if we encountered somebody who was struggling with a belief and they're starting to realize that they don't have good reasons, what advice would you have for them? So when you start giving suggestions on how they may be able to deal with it, those might be things that you're willing to consider doing on your own. So that might be a fun exercise to do. And the other thing I would say is surround yourself with other people who are questioning, and surround yourself with people who did find prophecies and predictions compelling. You don't want to just put yourself in your own bubble of people who agree with you that prophecies maybe aren't the best reason for thinking that a God is real. So talk to as many people as as you can would be my advice.
I'm curious, Mark, have you been able to have access to our fan groups or our Discord server? Or there's also a Street Epistemology Discord server.
Like on Facebook or something like on Facebook, or you mean?
There's 2 Facebook groups that we shared at the beginning of the show, and then we also have a Discord server that I'm sure we'll have a link pretty soon. If not, then it will at the end of the show. We're going to go to join Discord at the end of this.
No, I had no clue about those groups. I could join. I guess I can click and see what is it about. I just want to have one request from you guys. I would not like to put my name or country behind it, if it's possible. If it's not, it's your show. You can do whatever.
Well, we have a first name, but it's a pretty common first name. It'll be pretty hard to tell who you are.
You're pretty anonymous at this point.
Yeah.
Thanks for calling.
Thank you so much for calling, Mark. I hope that you have a good evening.
Same to you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Mark.